Now then, I've been looking forward to this. Just to explain, you're the head of the Sustainable Development at CNES. You're piloting the Space Climate Observatory, yeah? Mm-hmm. And the One Planet Summit Initiative, and you bring together 36 space agencies together. Let's first talk about what is CNES and what does it do?
Right. So, well, CNES is a bit like NASA, really, but the French way.
Okay.
And it's one of the first space agencies that has been created like 60 years ago. So it's one of the major one with the US NASA, of course, with the Russian one, with the Japanese one, the German ones, but it's one of the first. So we are about 2,500 people, and we are dealing both with civil and defense military applications, and we are dealing with the scientific community for all the Earth's observation instruments and satellites, and we also have some regalian and regulatory issues, and we are dealing with, we actually are controlling the application of French laws in order to make sure that satellites, we have issues with debris, as you know, and we make sure that satellites actually that are sent from Kourou in Guyana in the European spaceport are compliant with the French law. So we have all this. We are dealing with the industry as well. We are for the government. We are distributing some money in not only Earth observation but also with telecommunication and military applications.
So, kind of crucially, originally it was very much based around military and scientific research out in space. But crucially, what we are talking about here is how it can help the tourism industry. Now, I understand you have some slides that you want to show us. Let's just go through that because this is a very visual thing.
Yeah.
You can actually see it in front of you as well.
Ah, you're right. It's going to be a lot easier. So just to bring you a couple of datas and information about what we are doing when we are dealing with a scientific community. So we are, space is producing a lot of scientific data. Why? Because from the beginning of the space industry, one of the objectives, apart from some geopolitical issues, obviously, instruments were sent to space to gather some data about the universe and about the Earth. So one of the main roles now that we are playing with the European Space Agency and with other space agencies all over the world is to gather some data about the Earth, what we call the Earth system. So we are giving, there's an international organization gathering this data, so we make sure that the scientific community working for IPCC, for example, are able to modelize climate change for the years to come. So the different scenarios that you've been witnessing on the slides before, they're made possible because we know the Earth system thanks to the Earth observation. Just to make sure, I'm not really sure that everybody's got that in mind, but the Earth system that has been modelized for the IPCC scenarios are made with about 60 variables. It is called the essential climate variables, and they're all linked together, making the system, understand the system, how it evolves. And on these variables, more than half of them can only be documented from space. So now, I've just put a couple of figures on this slide just to make you understand that one of the first things we measure is the sea level rising and sea level change, which is very important for the tourist industry. And the heat, we were talking about heat waves. Here on the slides, you have the measurement of the ocean, the rise of the ocean, and because of the heat of the ocean. So that's what we are pretty much measuring. Not only heat, but that's just an example. So thanks to this, all these different measures. We're developing now some services using this data. Most of these data are actually available for the scientific community, completely free. Thanks to the European Copernicus system, for instance. And so everybody, all the scientists or even private companies who want to use these data to provide services for local governments, for elected officials, or any city that wants to have wants to know what's going to happen for them in the next 15, 20, or 30 years, then we can use this data and modelize what's going to happen. And here you have, for example, one of the products that has been developed very recently within the Space for Climate Observatory. It's called Litosat, and it's a product that is available for all those who want to actually buy it and know what's going to happen. And you can see the retreat of the seashore. So as
where is this?
So this is the Brittany coastline. We have been working on this. These services has been tested in Africa, in Brittany, and in south of France. And you see the different, the difference. You have a timeline at the bottom, and you can play with it. So you see what's going to be under the water in the next 15, 20 years, thanks to this Earth modelization that I've been talking about. So basically for the industry, for the tourism industry, basically you know if the villages you actually own will be underwater and when.
Wow. That accurate?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty much. I know, I'm not bringing good news for everyone.
No.
But at least you got time to get organized. What I want to convey as a message today is basically, if you don't use these data today to adapt, maybe move, maybe close some of the villages, resorts, whatever you have on the coastline, you're being irresponsible. Because we have the services to provide to you. We know what's going to happen. I mean, what is going to happen in the next 20 years is written in marble, right? It's not going to change. We know what's going to happen in the next 20 years. Yes, because of the inertia of the greenhouse gas emission in the atmosphere. And because what's the inertia of the Earth system is such that the temperature rise in the next 20 years is written.
It's set.
So it's set. So we know now that we're going to pass over the 2 degrees by 2050, right? There's no discussion about it. I just want to make sure that everybody's got that in mind. If we're going to reach 4 degrees in 2100, we pretty much don't know. But we will know in 20 years because of the same inertia. So basically, we're facing a choice between 2 degrees and 4 degrees, depending on how the population on Earth is actually fighting against climate change. So to come back to the services, you've got this one on the coastline shores that is available, and that it can be now. You can get organized for the next 15 to 20 years to know what you're going to do. That's one of the services we provide. We can provide. We've been talking about heat waves, right? And it was the very interesting keynote previously. So we can also modelize urban heat waves. And the urban heat islands, and we can predict it. What I've put on the slides, it's also a project that we have been developing in the Space for Climate Observatory, trying to measure, because we can measure for space in a very, thanks to the use of not only spatial data, but also some data from that are given by local communities, because of data we also have about how the buildings are made, thanks to the digitalization of all this building data. So we know where and when we're going to have urban heat islands, and who is the most vulnerable.
Because certain types of building construction, materials, whatever, will attract heat, will make that place hotter.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So it's very useful for elected officials, so they can plan. I mean, it takes 40 years, between 30 to 40 years, to reorganize completely, especially if you're a city on the shore, right? you got everything against
Yeah.
you if you're a big
So just
city on the shore.
using this example, just talk us through this.
Yeah. So you got on the so those are different cities. So we on the map you have a very precise idea of where the so the company is called CareMap. I can send it to them. It's a very nice startup, and they can provide you with a forecast on the heat islands in the city. So in Rennes, Nancy and Toulouse, this has been the cities where they tried it. So you can see the red spots and where it is. And they can also modelize, but other companies do that as well. They can also modelize the evolution of this heat provision, this heat islands provision, if you are actually changing the urbanization of the city. If you're planting trees, for example, if you're adding some water spots in the cities, then they can predict the evolution. They have modelization, they have digital twins of the city, and you can see what's going to happen in the next 20 to 30 years. So that's extremely interesting, and we use it to discuss with big cities such as Paris, for example.
So, sorry to interrupt, but when you're saying, for example, it's written for the next 20 years, but measures like this, putting water in, greening the city, they are
help the city to adapt.
They're going to help it adapt. They're not going to change anything.
No, but they're going to adapt, and it's going to be a lot easier to live with as a citizen living in there. And especially it's interesting to see, because it's very, very expensive for urban planners to change put money and to change the buildings, to build new buildings, to renovate the buildings. So with those kind of maps, so they can see where they can put the money first, where the most vulnerable people, because we have this data, thanks to demographic data, for example. So you can see, okay, I'm going to put first money where we have old people or very old buildings. So it helps for planning in 20 or 30 years. So that's one thing. So there's a couple of companies that actually provide these services. Ski resorts. We've been talking about ski resorts. Well, I was saying to my colleague here that ski probably was an epiphenomenon within humanity, because it's not going to last, unfortunately, for long. We are able, so you have that satellite. It's very easy, actually, to get some very robust data and pictures about snow, because it's very easy to observe it from space. Mm-hmm. It's one thing we actually do quite well with the scientists. So you can see the ski resort snow cover, for example. I just give you one example of what we've been doing. This is in the Pyrenees, where you can see the graphs there. It's a yearly comparison between different times, between the last the period between 1970s and 2024. It's a median of kind of snow cover. Yep. And then you see the last one in red. So basically, ski in the Pyrenees is going to be over between 2050-ish. In Europe, probably half of the snow cover in the ski resorts by the middle of the century in 2050, for half of them, there will be very, very little snow, meaning no ski or so limited. I mean, during the winter, And if we increase to 4 degrees by the end of the century, in Europe, it will be pretty much the end of the ski, right? And because of water pressure, we cannot imagine that we are going to just make the snow, because we have also a strong water pressure. I didn't put some slides about water, but we have many data about water pressure. So we are able to predict pretty much in the next 15 to 20 years which ski resort would not be able to welcome skiers in the winter. I mean, they can have very good time in spring or in summer, but that means that in terms of investing money to try to gain a couple of years might be not very wise. So that's the sort of product we can also do. We were talking about the Ponant. I love the Ponant. It's a very nice French company. I actually love to travel with them. It's very expensive.
Wasim didn't say that bit. Yeah, okay.
I didn't say it. There's something we actually do. We do work with maritime companies as well to try to optimize their routes and their roads. To avoid spending too much fuel, gas, and to reduce emissions. So we have all this live data thanks to one of our companies, CNES, that you have on the slides there on the left hand side. So we are able to see live all the evolution of the maritime traffic, and we are working with them to make sure that they exactly know the current and optimize their roads, so they're not using as much gas. We also can do some collision detection, which is very important, especially for small boats. So those are also the kind of services we can do for tourism.
I mean, we are running out of time, but this is amazing because this is a massive wealth of information that companies today, this is what I'm getting from you, companies today, they are irresponsible if they are not using it. They are irresponsible. They are actually letting things get worse unless they use your technology, your advice, your information to mitigate issues. Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, there's many companies and startups that provide this type of information. Please use them. Go and see them, and we can be a go-between them, because we don't do that ourselves. We just help them. We help them with the algorithm. We provide the data. We make sure that they make the most use of scientific data to help the tourist industry.
Wow. We have got to wrap up, but because I'm being told over there. But go on, just talk me through this.
Just maybe a last thing as well. We are there's an international cooperation between space agencies also to help to deal with major disasters because of climate change. You have all around the globe, and in very touristic areas, more and more catastrophic hurricanes and drought and tsunamis and stuff like that. So we are organized at the international level to make sure that we have a prediction. We can predict their arrival, and it's. I'm sure most of the responsible of resorts are now linked with civil security to make sure they gather the right information. If you don't, it does exist. There is a service which is called Predict Service. It's available all around the world and give you very precise civil security information when you have a disaster coming, even like 2 or 3 days before, with a range of potential risk, and then with the range decreases with the time. So please use it as well.
Yeah. I mean, we saw in Florida just recently, there was this example, wasn't there? Yeah. So they managed to clear everybody out of the area.
Exactly.
The number of deaths was limited, I think. And that was down to technology like this.
Yeah, this is the International Charter on Space and Major Disaster, and the US is, of course, a member of this charter that has been organized by the French Space Agency 30 years ago. So it's actually quite well known now, and thanks to this, it's all the satellites that are just above whoever it belongs to. The first satellite, which is above the potential disaster, give the images to civil security locally, which explains that when it's well organized, like in the US, for example, you can prevent the population to be strongly hit. And we provide it for people who are not as well organized, like in Haiti, for example, which has been dramatically touched many times by disaster, in Bangladesh, in India, and those countries which are actually dealing with extreme events a lot more than we do.
It's an amazing resource, Amazing resource, Laurence. And I just urge everybody to. I mean, you're going to be around for a bit, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll be tonight.
You're
yeah.
going to be swarmed by people saying, specifically, what about where? I mean, the Maldives comes to mind. New Orleans comes to mind. What's going to happen to these places in the future? I mean, you can tell us. And wow, I'm just astonished. I just wish we had more time. We don't. I'm going to say one
We are
last thing.
available. Frédéric is going to be available as well.
Excellent.
For you tomorrow.
Your colleague,
when
fantastic.
I'm left.
So
Okay.
please use these resources. That's what they're here
Thank
for.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And just one last thing, very quickly. We chatted on the call before we did this. Space tourism.
Oh.
It's an ego-driven, male, probably pointless exercise and damaging.
Yeah. In a short term, yes. I mean,
Okay.
Europe is not in favor of space tourism. It's an absolute disaster in terms of GHG emissions. Very expensive. It has no meaning whatsoever. Please go to a stratospheric balloon. You can see the Earth very well.
Stratospheric
And
balloons, yep.
exactly, and you can see a lot of the Earth thanks to balloons. But please don't use one of these silly spaceships because it has no sense whatsoever.
You heard it from the expert. Laurence, thank you so much indeed. Brilliant. Thank you.